Warm greetings to one and all present. It is indeed a great honor for me to welcome all our esteemed panelists and audience members to the 28th Convergence India and the 6th Smart Cities India Expo organized by Exhibitions India Group and the India Trade Promotion Organization. We start off the day with our virtual Clean and Water India Summit, and joining us today on the panel for the first session, that is Water, Sanitation and Hygiene Promotion, are Dr. Suresh Kumar Rohila, Senior Director, Center for Science and Environment, and Academic Director, CSE School of Water and Waste. Mr. Arumugam Kalimuthu, Program Director, Swachh Bharat Mission. Mr. Ajinkya Dharia, Founder and CEO, Padcare Labs. Brigadier Rajiv Williams, Corporate Head CSR, Jindal Stainless Limited Group, and Mr. Ashish Sachdeva, President Founder, Green Dream Foundation, will be our moderator for this session. Dr. Nimish Shah, Managing Director India, Toilet Board Coalition, will also be a part of this session and he'll join us in a few minutes. Now, before I hand over the session to Mr. Sachdeva, I would like to inform our audience that this session will be live streamed on our Facebook page, that is @IoT India Expo. And of course, the visitors who are attending our physical event at Pragati Maidan, New Delhi, can also watch this session live via our official event app, Swapcard. I also request all our esteemed speakers to kindly keep their microphone on mute when it is not in use to ensure complete clarity and no disturbance during the session. Also, the last 10 minutes of the session will be utilized for the Q&As. Mr. Sachdeva, I now hand over the session to you.
Thank you so much, Divyank, for introducing everyone, and a warm welcome to everyone to the first session for the Clean India Summit taking place under the Smart Cities India Expo. While we were connected, through the webinars throughout the pandemic as well, but finally, the entire event is happening in both physical and digital formats. So Clean India specifically as a dedicated track to sanitation, waste management, and overall cleanliness, today is taking place digitally, and day after tomorrow, that is the 26th of March, there will be physical sessions as well. So I'm looking forward to all of them, and thank you so much, all of you, for joining in today and taking out your precious time to be with me. So, before we quickly move on to the individual presentations, I'll clarify the format for today. While I'll just give some opening remarks, each of our esteemed panelists will have 10 minutes to share their thoughts. That could be in the form of a presentation or just verbal as well, whatever you're comfortable with. And at the end of each individual, if there are any natural questions, I will pose them. Otherwise, I'll park them towards the end to be asked along with the audience Q&A, because audience will be asking questions throughout the session, and we'll be picking up the relevant questions and try and address most of them in today's session itself. If any questions are missed out, we'll be addressing them separately, but the intent is that within the stipulated time, we're able to address all the questions. The topic that we are here to discuss today, WASH, which is water, sanitation, and hygiene. These are crucial, interconnected topics, yet ignored by a lot of individuals and communities. And the results of that, we have seen not only in the form of various diseases over the decades, but during the last year as well, when the pandemic broke out. Thanks to the initiatives, I always say that over the last, last decade overall, initiatives like Swachh Bharat Mission, Namami Gange, Jal Jeevan Mission, and even different kind of rating systems that have come in, like ODF, which is the open defecation free. So cities are competing, to perform better. But what we feel is that a lot needs to be done from an integration perspective. If you really want to scale up these initiatives, they need to work together. They won't need to work in an integrated format, and all the parties should work together as a team, because that will lead to better utilization of funds as well as greater impact. And I also know that, Dr. Rohila, you also mentioned this in one of your posts regarding convergence at city level. So this, felt like, we are resonating there completely. Some of the facts that really can move anyone who's attending this session or otherwise. And one of the reasons why we are taking up this particular theme as the first topic of discussion for today are that worldwide 2.2 billion people still lack access to safe drinking water. More than half of the global population does not have access to safe sanitation. Now, those are heart-wrenching facts, because for something, some people could be taking the same things for granted and not caring about. But imagine when more than half of the global population does not have access to safe sanitation and waste management systems. Sanitation, what I believe is just more than obviously building toilets. It's about different facilities, services, and more importantly, behavioral changes. Even though cities in India, specifically are going after these ratings that they want to get, that they're ODF, in certain categories. The point is that hygiene refers to the behavior that can improve cleanliness and lead to good health. So that behavioral change in the people is the most crucial, yet the most difficult thing that we need to achieve to really get to those targets of sanitation that we all are aiming at in our respective domains. If we need integrated action that I was talking about, I think we also need community participation fueled by some serious, not only just government, but also CSR efforts. That's where the corporates also step in with their serious alignment to the sustainable development goals. And today we will also ponder upon the role of CSR in driving, I say, 3S, which is sustainability, sanitation, and social inclusions. One example that I could quote here, while we work with a lot of waste pickers, especially informal waste pickers in different cities, wash is the lowest priority for them because, survival comes first, right? But what we try to change during that intervention over a period of time through capacity building, infrastructure improvement, and boosting livelihoods, for which we, adopt a lot of different methods, they are motivated to adapt safer and cleaner lifestyles. So, I could share more examples later, but I say, because like I again said, adapting those practices is a behavioral change, and policies, education, CSR, innovation, all of them play an important role. And I'm so pleased that I have panelists representing all of these domains with me today: research, education, technical, CSR, innovation. So without taking much time, I'll now pass on the speaking rights to the first speaker for today, who's Dr. Suresh Kumar Rohila, who's Senior Director at CSE, and he's been doing a lot of work in the space of water sustainability and sanitation. So, sir, I'll request you to kindly take on from here.
Thank you, Ashish, and for setting up the context and giving us a background. And good morning to all the panelists and the participants who are joining from different parts of the country as well as abroad and live streaming of the event. I direct the water program at Center for Science and Environment, which is one of the global policy think tanks. In India, we have been doing research and supporting reform agenda and what is required in the space of water and sanitation since 1980 when CSE was set up. And I would talk about that, how the entire journey is and what the learnings are there. But I would like to say that this pandemic has reinforced, re-emphasized the need that water is the starting point, and then sanitation is also important. But they can't be seen in isolation. They have to be seen together. And hygiene is something which is important in the pandemic, because that was clearly evident last March. And I remember I wrote on the last water day saying that WHO when said that one of the things how we can beat pandemic is that, everybody will have to wash hands 5 to 10 times. If you take minimum 5 times in a day, 10 times maximum. And if each time you use 5 to 6 liters of water, or if you take a minimum 2 to 3 liters of water, you can imagine that in terms of total water availability, what was the quantum of water required per household, which was required over and above that. There is a demand and supply gap, but there was a demand for water, which is to ensure that if pandemic need to be handled, as well as this would result in more sewage generation, which we are already struggling that, we are not able to treat 100% sewage at the moment. So that was again reinforcing that after pandemic, water and sanitation remain the core priority areas, and certainly the governments are engaged in. Governments have IEC campaign around that. But now to just talk about this whole urban. I work in the urban water, and I would say that the urban issues are also relevant today to the rural areas because all the human settlements are aspiring to be, one day developed and have all the facilities which are there in urban areas also. This is an aspiration of all human settlements. So the issues of water and sanitation are same in human settlement, I would say, per se. Or they would be in coming 15, 20 years, as in all rural settlements now we have provision of toilet. And India has declared itself, ODF. So I would say the challenges of water, sanitation, and hygiene are same in all human settlements. However, the scale of that may vary, and I'm sure other colleagues on the panel would speak more about that. But however, I would like to say that in India, the journey of water management clearly shows that pre-independence, there is a learning which we are forgetting that the source of water is basically decentralized, and there is also a role of community to be played. What has happened is that post-independence, we have a colonial legacy saying that institutions have been set up, and maybe that time that was the need of the hour, that was important, that there are institutions responsible for delivery of network services and hardware. So there are only institutions responsible for water management. Community role has been reduced to less, and there is always a focus which has moved on the big is beautiful, like big dams, long transfer of water, and this is what and centralized water supply system. So this has been the focus in India to arrange water, and water supply side planning has been a lot of focus. And what has happened is, first we are trying to provide water to each and every household. That has been the focus. And later on, we come and think about sanitation. So usually, if you bring down this problem, if you come to a household level, first you have a water pipeline, and after 10, 20 years, you come up with a sewage pipeline. And then what happens is then sewage leaks into the water systems, and because these systems are not maintained, and then the contamination comes into your household, and you say that you don't have safe water supply available. So these are the complex issues that water and sanitation need to be seen together if we really want to address the issue of hygiene and hygiene for all, or we say safe sanitation. So this is one important thing that India, the sources of water supply are decentralized, and we have a very diverse rainfall pattern, which has been documented by CSC in a book called Dying Wisdom, where we had highlighted that there is a role of community, and different agroclimatic regions should have different water supply management programs. And it was very clearly visible that we have not been able to address that. In India, when we see in human settlements, we are again going for one size fit for all. We are trying to say that in urban areas, 150 liters of water will be available to each and every individual, whether he lives in Cherrapunji or he lives in Jaisalmer. Point is that that kind of resource may not be available. And we are also trying to give most like same kind of design solutions, that if sanitation problems are there, for example, if you have toilet and flushing systems, do we need to have the same system in Jaisalmer where there is no groundwater contamination issue because there is no groundwater 500, 600 feet? But we are coming up with some. So if you look at the standard guidelines available for water supply and management and sanitation management, in the name of centralization and standardization, what has happened is we have forgotten the richness of or the diversification or decentralization of source availability. And as a result of what has happened in this technology choices which we have done, make provisioning of water and for handling of the sewage, largely it has been centralized. We have set up this as a model for cities or human settlements, saying the water will, as a village becomes a town and town becomes a city, water will come from faraway distances. And we would have to pump the water, pipe the water, and supply the water. We will have overhead tanks, we will have tanking system, which will be highly energy intensive system. And for the sewage, which is the sanitation, we have the same model. We would have STPs located outside the city, next to the river or next to the sea, whether there is electricity available or not, whether the sewage reaches there or not. This is how the entire designing of the water supply system happens. What happens is this: there is enough evidence now, there are enough cases in the NGT which we see that the rivers are not clean. Even Delhi and Mumbai, the two big cities where the biggest investment in terms of sewage treatment has happened, we know that these cities do not have clean rivers and clean water bodies, and there are issues of contamination. So hygiene and sanitation for all remains a big issue, even the national capital and the financial district. So you can imagine that what is the state of the affair of 8,000 urban centers. I don't want to talk about the rural villages where we are trying to say under the big achievement, what we say that we have achieved something important in the name of ODF, that there is a provision of toilet. That was important. But then also what is important is that what happens at the back end of the toilets. The waste which gets generated, how it is handled, whether do we have that mechanism in place, and the liquid waste which gets generated from the toilets as well as the grey water. Because with the toilet, people will also ask that there should be sustainability of this initiative, which is Swachh Bharat Mission resulting in ODF. But how do we ensure that people use the toilet? They will need water. They need water, then they will also generate black water as well as they will also use grey water. And as we talk about 5 trillion economy or whatever numbers, this growth and the development will also raise aspirations of people. The quality of life will improve, and also quality of life will result in more and more water requirement, more water testing assets. Today, I see in even a remote village. I have done some survey work in Valley of Flowers in hill areas. Over there, I see people using washing machines. I've been to remote villages. I see people using flushing toilets. So this quality of life, you cannot stop them from this thing. But however, you have to introduce water efficiency and conservation. However, along with the toilet provisions and race for providing water for all, we are not able to say that you can. What is the minimum number with which you can survive, and we can still have a comfortable access to amenities and facilities. So today, because when I have had an experience of sitting in various EIA committees where projects come for clearances. So as a curative and a reactive approach, we are trying. We can enforce that we make cities to be designed at 100 liters per capita per day. But if you see all the cities today, they are designed technically. They are supposed to be designed at 150, and we have done a survey under a publication which was 10 years ago called Excreta Matter, where we found that cities were supplying as high as 500 liters, or an average at least 250 to 300 liters per capita per day. Which means in India, the issue is of water mismanagement and management. So it is not about the source of water supply and water. If you really look at the total demand in human settlements, the drinking water requirement and the human water, if you leave the agriculture side and the industrial side separate, may not be 5 to 10% of the total. So we could have a safe and sustainable sanitation for all, can have good hygienic conditions if we really choose good technology, and we also have what works where, when it works, and who is able to. So issue here is the scale at which the change is required. If we really want to have hygiene for all and safe sanitation for all, important is that we connect the issue of water, sanitation, and hygiene, and we reflect it in the form of health, because ultimately it is related to health, the public health. If you look at the villages when they become town, the origins of town planning is the public health, basically. If you look at the origins of Ministry of Urban Development, it was part of the Ministry of Health, actually. And Mr. Kalimuthu Arunagam knows that. He sits in, his colleagues sit in, CPHEU. They were historically part of the department which was responsible for public health. So all these issues, water, sanitation, and, hygiene, the origins of that were correct. We all knew that they are connected to public health. But in somewhere in the mad rush of providing infrastructure, we have forgotten that it is the public health and the health what is important. The outcome is important, and we have started working that there is a water program which doesn't talk to the sanitation program. Sanitation program does not talk to the health program in the country. So I would stop here, Ashish, and I would say the big message is that we are not working on the preventive side. There is a lot. People say that there is this particular mission talking about that by 2026 every village or every town would save 3 water bodies. But what is the size of the water body? How much recharge would that contribute? So we are not talking about. So we see a lot of MIS systems on the government portfolio where a lot of institutions are involved in providing support, but they don't give the actual contribution these preventive side efforts are going to be. But on the destructive side, I would say, whereby you want to extract the groundwater, you would see hundreds and thousands of projects coming up with MLD figures, that these many million liters of water will be extracted from the river, these many million liters from groundwater, and these many million liters if we really want to make schemes for water supply for villages and towns. So I think, Ashish, I would stop here. So we are in a mad rush for providing water supply to all. But This will also result in sanitation issues because we are not able to even cover the urban centers. It is restricted to only few cities, which are 500 out of 8,000. And this will result in a huge hygiene problems and ultimately public health issues. So I will pass it on to you. Thank you very much for giving me a time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rohila. These are very insightful points for everyone. You rightly pointed out, that we need local decentralized solutions, and it has been talked about, but action is still, the speed of action is still a concern. To quote an example, most of the residential complexes, like when we talk about the urban cities, most of these gated societies, the high rise, that those were built like 5-10 years ago. They don't even have the inbuilt decentralized STPs. And now the foundation of the entire structure is not done in a way that it can even be retrofitted. So there are a lot of issues related to that. The city, obviously, there are negotiations happening with the ULB that could we just pump it up into the main sewage line? But how's that a solution? Another thing is that the load needs to be shared with everyone based on the demand. At the same time, the last point that you rightly mentioned about this revival of the river bodies and the lakes and all other water bodies that keeps happening, and why do we fail to see tangible results? Why was COVID a time where everything started looking better? There were a lot of questions which naturally came up. But let's say if we do not clean up Hindon, if we do not have an integrated action on Hindon, how can we expect Yamuna to be clean? Right, that's a very simple example. So we'll take up some more questions related to this later on the session today. So for now, I will request our second panelist for today. That's Mr. Arumugam Kalimuthu, who is the Program Director for Swachh Bharat Mission Technical Assistance Program at the Water, Sanitation and Hygiene Institute, popularly known as the WASH Institute. So over to you, Mr. Arumugam.
Thank you, Mr. Asis. Thank you, fellow panelists and participants. Good morning to all of you. And Suresh already covered many points. Maybe I'll try to capture my sharing. Going to be 4 key areas. One is about the Swachh Bharat Mission program, and also going forward, SBM 2.0 is coming up. So what is going to be the major activities around? And also maybe Jal Jeevan Mission also is coming up. So maybe water part. And maybe what are the key lessons learned during last 1 year during this COVID-19 pandemic, and also maybe the role of CSR going forward, both for the Jal Jeevan Mission as well as SBM. There's a great role for CSR support. So where they can contribute, like these are the 4 areas I'm going to highlight. First of all, maybe 2014, the sanitation coverage. We know that rural sanitation coverage was only 34%. So maybe 2019. October 2nd, we declared. And similarly, urban also a great movement, and almost we have reached 100% sanitation coverage. So in terms of toilet access and toilet usage is improved, no doubt about it. But at the same time, going forward, whether we have completed the task, so for my mind, it is not it, because still long way to go in terms of achieving total sanitation or holistic sanitation in both rural villages as well as urban town. So what we are coming up now, so most of the cases, most of the cities, we complete constructed toilet, but mostly single pit are connected to the septic tank. So what is going to happen after 3 years, 4 years down the line? So maybe when the pit is filled, so how they are going to empty this sludge, and this is going to be the major challenge. So retrofitting going to be the major activity. And also maybe some cases also data indicates that in even rural area, nearly 20%, 22% of the households, they have constructed septic tank. So what is going to happen to septic tanks? Once the septic tank is full, at least 3 to 4 years interval you need to empty them. So that's what maybe the area of the grey water management and the fecal sludge management is going to be the critical aspects. We all know that maybe from 2011 census and maybe even this improvement in sewerage connection in the country. So as per the 2011 census, only 34.7% household connected to sewer line. Even if you now calculate around 40-45, it's not more than that. Maybe so most of the cases, even urban communities, the outlet is connected to the septic tank. So what is happening on the septic tank? So most of the cases, nearly we have 4,000 towns, and including census town, over 7,000 towns. But whereas the number of STPs in the country is around 1,200 or 1,300 STPs. So what is happening in the remaining town? There is no treatment facilities. Maybe we need to empty the septic tank at regular interval. The cesspool operator sucks everything and maybe dumps somewhere. Most of the cases in water bodies are open areas. So that's what maybe the going forward, it is the focus around fecal sludge and septic management, grey water management going to be the critical element. So of course I accept the solid waste management also equally important to keep our city and our villages clean. So that's what the ODF plus components, if you look at. So urban ODF plus is maintaining, managing community sanitation and public toilet, keeping the public toilet, the community toilet clean. That's going to be ODF plus. And ODF plus is including, solid waste management and grey water management and fecal sludge management is going to be a critical aspect. So it's a great for all of us. Maybe this year, Honorable Finance Minister announced a huge budget for water and sanitation. One of the greatest, maybe highest budget. Maybe if you take last 50 years, we analyze. This the quantum of money allotted for water sector is amazing. It's a great success for entire water and sanitation sector. The government has allotted now huge money for both for SBM 2.0 as well as for Jal Jeevan Mission. So that's what maybe translating into action and maybe achieving ground result is going to be the critical elements coming days. And that's what maybe the retrofitting of toilet, sustainability of sustained use of the toilet, retrofitting of single pit to twin pit, or maybe emptying of fecal sludge, and these are and also solid waste management, and these are the areas definitely going forward. The SBM 2.0 going to focus on both in urban area as well as in the rural area. So government has come up with a very clear-cut guidelines and advisories, and definitely maybe it's get implemented. Then definitely the success rate is definitely we can see what we achieved last 5 years in terms of SBM 1. So same kind of success rate I'm hoping we'll be achieving down the line, 5 years down the line. This is about something around sanitation side. So good move. There are a lot of budget available now. It's a time for our local bodies, our Gram Panchayats to get into action and implementing the activities and utilizing the budget available from the state government and central government. Achieving the results is critical to achieve overall clean sanitation, holistic sanitation in all our villages and cities. And coming back to water, again, Jal Jeevan Mission is focusing by achieving 2024 household 100% household water supply coverage. Each and every household going to access to drink water. That's the aim of the government, and already the work is started. And so it's great. But at the same time, we see it's not a simple task. Household water supply connection across the country. It is a very, very challenging task. Why? Because almost our existing water supply schemes, we analyze only around 20% only surface water based, rest all groundwater based. So we all know that from the existing data available from Water Resource Ministry, others, the groundwater or water depletion or freshwater depletion is very much evident. So definitely how we are going to achieve the result and maybe sustaining the drinking water sources going to be the critical element. Particularly we know that when you go deep in ground, so definitely you encounter with a number of water quality issues. We have nearly fluoride issues, 203 districts in 17 states. You have arsenic issues in 4 states. You have iron contamination in nearing about 1.5 lakhs habitations. So you have nitrate problems. You have a lot of issues around on water quality. So maybe overcoming all and treating this water and maybe ensuring the sustainable drinking water supply to each and every household. It's a Herculean task. Definitely government. So the JJM Jal Jeevan Mission projects the guidelines are amazingly designed. It is taking care of the source-based water budgeting and water security plan. Water quality monitoring and surveillance also going to be part of it. So they are not only focusing on coverage side and also they are focusing around sustainability side. I hope everything get translated into the ground. So if you translate everything into whatever there in the guidelines, if we get translated, definitely hope the sustainability part also will be taken care. But still, it is going to be a huge challenge. It's not like a sanitation project. Maybe construction of household toilet, for me, it is a simple when compared to providing drinking water because a lot of complex issues there. mainly both because surface water sources are very minimum, and again the water depletion is taking place. Water quality issues are so very much. So all those areas need to be given focus, and maybe we should all work together to achieve the result. And another major area going to be because providing increased water or access to pipe water supply naturally, because 80% of the water going to come out as a grey water, the waste water, right? Definitely you need to handle grey water management, wastewater management as well. So recycling, reuse and recycle and reuse should be given more focus. And water management, water harvesting should be given top priority. For example, if you analyze last 100 years of average rainfall data of our country, it's not much variation. So that not much variation. Where's the problem? Problem is because most of our water bodies, our water holding structures, it's either encroached or maybe lost their water holding capacity. So why Chennai flood is a great example, right? So because all water holding structures or waterways were blocked, and because of that, there was a huge flood. And the district called Ramnad, if you take the satellite imaginary, there are 39,000 irrigation tank and percolation tank. So what is the status of those tanks? Maybe whether it is all the water holding capacity intact, doubtful. That's what across the country, definitely the focus should be around, making sure that our all water bodies, our water holding structures, they're bringing back to this original capacity, clearing all the feeder channel waterways getting cleared, and maybe focusing around water conservation, harvesting should be the major focus towards achieving a sustainable result on water supply coverage and sustainability of sanitation activities as well. Coming back to what is a lesson learned maybe during this 1 year pandemic. One is the major one is I'm happy that maybe part of this sector, almost 30 years in water and sanitation sector. We were talking right from 89, 90. So one of the personal hygiene aspects of hand washing, right? So all village demonstration, 7 steps of hand washing and things like that. Maybe whatever we tried, but that's a very limited extent. But last 1 year, the pandemic brought big changes with each and everyone. Now hand washing become, parcel of everyone's life in a day. Not only one time, many times, several times. And also maybe the recognition value or the importance of sanitation workers, well recognized. That's another thing. People started recognizing their role, their support, and their dedication, their work. That's amazing. So that's what these are the thing. Definitely, maybe so. Likewise, so it's not only only when there is a outbreak or some pandemic, then only we come to realize this kind of things. It's not be the case. But anyway, this brought this kind of lessons as well. And maybe so going for already I mentioned about SBM 2.0 and Jal Jeevan Mission program. Going forward, what is the role of CSR here? Maybe my request to all the CSR companies who are participating here, my request is that so amazing support they are providing for all the NGOs to get implement a lot of their activities. So maybe my request is please give support not only for the hardware side, please equally give importance for software activities as well. That's what my major request. Most of the cases because the visibility side we see more infrastructure projects than maybe whether that project is going to sustain or not. That focus is little less receiving end from the CSR side. My request is equal importance should be given both for hardware facility as well as software facility. Second thing is now, so going away from the traditional way of doing, providing support like construction of school toilet and things like that. And also maybe there is a great, the CSR companies can support for grey water management. They can support for construction of fecal sludge treatment plant in the city or maybe Gram Panchayat. Provide the co-treatment facility for existing STP. So maybe we can, the traditional way of, we need to slightly move from the traditional support to little more innovative so that we can contribute for the SBM 2.0 JJM government's scheme of SBM as well as JJM. And also maybe it's not only that, huge money available from the government to implement the SBM 2.0 as well as for JJM. And maybe what all the cities are UL based, their human resource availability is very limited. Maybe the CSR company can also think about providing sort of technical support unit support, program management unit support to the city or district, so that the team can work with the state government or maybe the district administration or with the city to translate the government scheme into the ground, and providing that sort of technical support also be one of the area maybe CSR companies can look into. These are my requests to CSR companies. So maybe I stop here. Maybe if any question, maybe I'll take up at later stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Arumugam, for bringing that talk full of experience. Is the top word that I can say. With that vast experience, you have put together all the points so well, and the couple of key takeaways, you can say comments that I would also like to make is that I completely agree with the point of making communities and establishments also self-sufficient in their water needs, water requirements. I'm not sure what is your or the other panelists' take on interconnecting of rivers. I've always been skeptical about that thought, because it's like playing with the the natural ecosystems. I think that it's the cities, the way they're designed, the kind of geography that they have. If they are facing any water crisis, if they take some local steps, they take local decentralized solutions. If they reduce, reuse, and recycle water, most of their problem can be solved. In most of the cities, during the rainy season, all of the water is going down the drain, and then in summers they're struggling for water. We hear that story every year. So I think and I'm glad this initiative that got launched, I guess, day before yesterday on World Water Day, for catching the rain where it falls. I think we have been talking about it, all of the institutes, research companies, all the national missions, but it's good that a lot of focus is coming on this in a dedicated fashion. And I think rainwater harvesting is something which has to be mandated and reinforced on all the commercial establishments as well as residential complexes. So, and I think if even if a household can become water sufficient, the problem starts getting solved there. Right now, we are taking the resources and the commitments from the government for granted. I think our role, individuals' role, has to be much higher than what it is today. And regarding the CSR bit here, you mentioned that I completely agree with. Even some of the CSR partnerships that we have done, sir. Our focus is not just infrastructure. In fact, our focus is more on the lines of capacity building and making sure that whatever is the intervention, it's going to sustain. So because CSR is not there to just be there and continue running it. It's not an adoption. It's like they're there as a catalyst to solve a problem or to boost an initiative, and then from there has to be a sustainable exit plan so that particular project stays and remains intact even after the exit has been taken. So I think the next talk will also ponder upon some of those facts as well, and alignment not only to the sustainable development goals but also to the national mission. So you're contributing and collaborating to the Swachh Bharat mission, Jal Shakti mission, and on all these individual programs that are coming out. So thank you so much, Mr. Arumugam. We'll come back to you with some questions towards the end of the session. And I'll now would like to invite Brigadier Rajiv Williams, who's the corporate head for CSR from the Jindal Stainless Limited Group. And I guess passing the torch kind of a situation, because where Mr. Arumugam kind of concluded his talk is what is Brigadier Williams going to elaborate on. So over to you, sir.
Thank you, Ashish. Thank you very much. And I would like to, of course, acknowledge the fact that Smart Cities project, and it's an annual feature which happens, and I'm glad that Exhibitions India has been doing this at Pragati Maidan for some years now. It's the 6th summit that we're having. And I would like to, of course, very specially remember my dear friend, Prem Behel, late Prem Behel, who was the chairman of Exhibitions India. And I remember him very fondly, especially being a friend and being such an initiative organizer for such like activities. Also thanking the team of Exhibitions India for inviting me to this panel, with Ashish actually leading. And Ashish and myself go some years now. And from this Green Dream Foundation, who's a partner with us as far as CSR projects are concerned. So I will address some of these issues and try and see, but I'm not really that technical as some of my colleagues have just really made out the session to be, which is right. But I'm from the ground level organizations in the sense that we are supporting both our NGOs who are implementing, as also some other companies who are actually implementing our ODF programs earlier. I'll touch upon all of that. Now, to give you a background a little about myself, in the sense that I'm with Jindal Stainless Limited group of companies, which is part of the OP Jindal group of companies. And whether it is Jindal SAW, one brother looks after that, and JSW Steel in Mumbai is looked after by Sajjan Jindal. I am with the third brother, Ratan Jindal, Jindal Stainless Limited group, and the youngest one, Naveen Jindal, who handled JSPL. So, we all are working independently, yet there is a lot of collaboration and connect. And with us, of course, we have a foundation which runs CSR projects, including, of course, projects being run directly by the company, and I look after everything. And Mrs. Deepika Jindal is the chairperson of the foundation. Being ex-army, I come with a lot of experience and a baggage of the military standpoint. And having served for many years, especially in this field of the environment, especially in the field of clean cantonments, isn't there a stark difference that you find when you enter a cantonment area vis-a-vis when you move out of a cantonment area? Well, there is a lot of connect of what we have been talking about. There's more accountability. There's lots to do with actual engagement and implementation. And I just feel, whether it's IEC or whether it's to do with a lot of awareness program, which is essential, it's a lot to make sure that what your intent is seen to the last mile. That is where the gap is. That is where I think the government machinery has to ensure that whatever is your intent, you come up with projects, even the project of, let's take the Swachh Bharat mission, to make so many toilets. And as rightly Mr. Arumanga mentioned, it's not only the hardware, it's software also, which is very important, which we have to contribute towards. Now, just constructing toilets and using that huge amount of resources in just construction piece without actually seeing the feasibility of its usage, it's a waste of money. Why can't we think of having some mechanisms to ensure that the implementation is carried out in letter and spirit? That's where I come from, that stock that I'm talking about. And as a corporate now with large corporations, we are looking at exactly those kind of solutions through partnerships, through collaborations. And after all, what is WASH? WASH leads basically to health. Clean India means a healthy India. And that's where our initiatives and energies must focus, whether it's to do with water, whether it's to do with hygiene and sanitation. It's all to do with health of a country, health of a nation state. And we have to be committed to making sure that we make strides in improving our health index. And I think our focus must remain that we have to work towards the SDGs. The SDG 17 is collaboration. We've got to collaborate with corporates. We've got to collaborate with NGOs. We've got to collaborate with partners who've got that kind of an expertise, whether it is CSE or whether it's Green Dream Foundation or whether it is Future Group of companies. We have had partnerships earlier also. And I think most important for scale, it is the government. We must collaborate with the government. We've been making efforts, our small steps, because scale, corporates cannot go to scale. You can only contribute a little for your own areas. And I come from a manufacturing sector, an extractive industry. Our focus is what? Our focus, our priority, our prime concern is the people around our plant locations. That's the first priority. It's only after that when we go to supply chain and wherever the products are being sold, so we go pan-India. It's unlike the service industry, which can only focus, let's take exclusively on wash, invest whatever amount that you have to do, 2%, 10% or whatever, into wash projects. And therefore, you do not have that kind of a binding of looking after communities which have been displaced because of your project, because of your plants that you've actually been able to establish. That's your first priority. Those people who you move them out, you're using their water. The Brahmani River, for example, in Jajpur, Orissa, it means that water is shared by 30 large corporates, whether it's Tatas, whether it's to do with Visa Steel, it's got to do with Nilachal Ispat Steel or Jindal Stainless or whoever. There are 13 corporates, so you can imagine what will be the outcome of the water consumption from just one single source of river, which is not too far. Isn't it our responsibility to recharge that water? That's where the projects are going. So that's also part of what we're talking of today. The pollution, I mean, you are going to be spewing out NOx and SOx of all these large corporates who are there, steel and stainless, steel and power. Only steel and power in Kalinganagar. You all have heard of Kalinganagar, some of you guys have. And I know that how relevant it is for us as a business responsibility to take care of the environment. And small steps are wash. But we don't have the liberty of exclusively spending on wash. We've got to look after other defined areas of the community, the needs of community based on the baseline survey. So whether it's to do with education, whether it's to do with skill training, whether it's to do with environment or human rights of the communities and things of that sort, or infrastructure development. So there are a number of verticals in which the manufacturing and the extractive industries have to get. But it is the connect with the community. And as you know, Mr. Kalimuthu had mentioned this, and also Suresh, that it is a linkage with the community. That is what CSR is all about. The first P is people. The second P is planet, and whatever profit you're investing is 2% as per the mandated requirement. But for large companies, it's nothing to do with 2%. Whether you are in red, for example, our company is in red, yet you're investing in CSR. You're not supposed to do CSR. Or like Tata is spending about 10%. So it's nothing to do with that for larger corporate. But I know the MSME sector and many other corporates who may be as large or larger or smaller, for them there is a direction because of this Companies Act 2013, which has been incorporated and makes sense, makes good sense. So some of our projects that I would like to share with you on water, clean drinking water, we've got projects around Haryana as also in Orissa. That's where our major plants are. And I think it's a responsibility, as I mentioned earlier too, that around our plant locations, we try to provide clean drinking water to schools. We try to provide clean drinking water to the communities. The second thing is our water harvesting. I mean, Suresh has spoken and so has Mr. Kalimuthu has mentioned water harvesting. Now, whether it's to do with only your plants, because your plants consume so much of water, but there's rainwater in Orissa is huge. So, water harvesting, firstly, when you do it with your own plants, you have saved a lot of water. The second thing is water harvesting in schools and communities. Try and provide that kind of infrastructure, which we have been doing for some years, but the ownership has to be done by the community. If we have a relationship of a funder-funded relationship, it does not work. Equal partnerships really makes that ownership levels really high and makes exciting journey for everybody, because that's the connect which corporate social responsibility has to get involved in. It is a community connect that we can only take anything forward, whether it's the clean development mechanisms, which is our responsibility for the environment. We've got projects, the UNFCCC projects also, as far as carbon mitigation strategies are concerned, both in the plant as also in the community. There are many things. I don't want to go off course, but that's also protection of the environment, which is again a part of the wash, is part of health. Or it is to do with activities around waste management. We've got a lovely project, and thanks to Ashish and his team, fantastic. It's not only IEC which is working on and developing various, paintings around the entire Hisar town, for example, in Orissa, maybe are doing that. In Delhi also is doing so much of work. But it is also motivating those rag pickers, training them, getting the household waste, segregating almost 1,000 household. Almost now at the beginning, we started off with almost 1 ton of household waste is being created, wealth is being created out of that. It's also to do with insurance. I mean, which is institution or organization provides insurance to the rag pickers? Is there anybody? Such like innovative ideas coming from partners makes a very interesting journey. And insurance is an important piece. It's an investment of the corporates. It's a gain for your project itself because there is accountability. There is a sense of belongingness that his commitment will be much higher. He is protected. That poor man is protected. Who's collecting your garbage? Who's converting that garbage into waste wealth? He, that initiator, needs that protection. Who is not being protected? Whether it's by the government or by anybody else. And same thing, we can go on further on making sure that we can provide a clean environment as far as the parks are concerned. There are huge parks that are around. You see the waste that is dumped in the parks. Maybe some of our corporates can invest into greening the environment. And these are the basic rudiments of a clean mechanism for a clean city, for clean India. And obviously, when I am talking about what has been mentioned by my 2 speakers earlier, that, it's not only the question of an access to toilets, but it is the usage of the toilet. It is not only the question of 7,000 towns with 1,200 STPs. It is the question of an IEC that you engage with communities. We are talking about COVID. There are the huge challenges around COVID in keeping the environment clean. Yet, we are not considering that with this spike that is taking place, activities are going on. I mean, guys are just wearing masks, whether it's here or beyond, but there is no stoppage with these festivities going on. What is the clean issue which needs to be kept in mind? I hope somebody is listening. We've got to be careful. We've got to make sure that we can invest. Even if we invest into grey water management treatment plants or project management systems, I will once again get back the implementation. The framework that you have created needs to be enforced. Needs to be enforced to the last round. And I think if we do that, you have to have very strict controls, have very strong systems in place, penalties or whatever. If it is good for the country, please enforce it. Enforce what my partners have been doing and try and put that into a framework along the SDGs. So whether it's SDG 5, SDG 11, SDGs 13 or 17, document it. Put that into a matrix, and I'm very happy to share with you from our CSR activities, we are relating it to the SDGs on a digital platform through a partner again. And straight away when I see my homepage, I get exactly how much we have invested, what is the outcome of that investment in that particular SDG equivalent, or do we need a mid-cost correction and apply that makes a difference in lives of community. Thank you. I'll pause here and I'll wait for questions afterwards, but it's been a delight, and I will request approach Green Dream Foundation and make sure that our projects go sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brigadier Williams. It's a pleasure to always hear a grounded talk from you. That's the one adjective that I could say, because You're talking about the ground initiatives, the relation to the SDGs, and again adding the important angles of technology into it. So, and I think while our partnership with the Jindal Stainless Group is itself coming out to be a high impact partnership, I think we together want to create those ripple effects that people understand that what kind of initiatives are needed really to drive sustainable sanitation and waste management, because we don't want to implement any initiatives which cannot sustain on their own few years down the line. The purpose is to create that environment in the city, and so that can be done in any city where the behavioral changes are brought in, so that that toilet that was built starts getting used. And from it being used, the government has woken up to the fact that the waste coming out of the toilet also needs to be managed, and managed in a way that it is environment friendly. So I think what CSR initiates as a center of excellence, if it succeeds, should be replicated across the country. And I hope more of such projects under various fronts go on to inspire the state governments and the central government for the years to come. So thank you so much, sir. And there'll be some questions towards the end, so I'll request you to please stay tuned with us. I'll now request, I think Dr. Nimish Shah has joined in. Thank you so much for joining amidst your busy schedule. But like you would have heard, the last few minutes of the talk, we have been talking about the sustainability of the toilets a lot, from building it to maintaining them to motivating people to use them properly. So I guess it again becomes like a relay that you being the managing director India for the Toilet Board Coalition, it will be here very insightful to hear out your experience and thoughts from the ground. So over to you, sir.
Yeah. So you can hear me well?
Yes, very well.
Thank you so much, Ashish, and really a pleasure to be coming on this platform. I heard Brigadier Williams, I heard Kalimathu Arumugam, and we have known each other for some time, and it was great to hear his thoughts. Indeed, I believe that these forums are really required to kickstart the discussion on what is the next phase for the country that we are to embark upon to achieve that real progress on sanitation, hygiene, and water. Now, let me start by giving a bit of a background for Toilet Board Coalition. Toilet Board Coalition was born out of an idea that it is not enough for meeting SDG 6 that only governments and NGOs do something about SDG 6. It is equally important for corporates to bring in their expertise and entrepreneurship to this platform. Accordingly, Toilet Board Coalition initiated a flagship program which has been running very successfully for the last 5-6 years, which is called the Startup Accelerator. In fact, if there are any startups who have joined this call, please do visit and apply to the accelerator program for 2022. The applications are open till end of April. The other things we are driving are very strategic projects. And in India, we are doing some work in the area of urban sanitation. And going ahead, we wish to really bring in the entire sanitation in that whole circular kind of a system. And I will dwell upon the reasons why that is important. Yeah. So in this 21st year of 21st century, I would like to, on this platform, focus more on hygiene and sanitation and less on water, not because it is of any less importance, perhaps more, but there are other speakers who have dwelled onto it in very significant manner. So let me speak about hygiene and sanitation at some length. Also, I want to just remind everybody, when we speak of water, sanitation, and hygiene, the interdependencies cannot be ignored and should not be ignored. In fact, the word sanitation is a subset of the concept of hygiene, because sanitation is all about keeping the harmful germs away, which exist in human waste, keeping them away from contacting human beings. So sanitation is, in some, my belief, sanitation is a subset of hygiene. Now, let me begin by talking about the whole sustainability agenda. Yeah, and up until COVID-19 came upon us, we were talking about sustainability agenda from primarily two lenses. Yeah, the first lenses was about environmental degradation. Yeah, and we were talking about carbon, we were talking about the glaciers melting, and so many other things, water bodies getting polluted and all stuff. So I think that was one big lens when we were looking at sustainability, plastics included. And the other lens was around social justice. How do we ensure that the underprivileged sections are, given dignified occupations, they get the right, justice in the society and all that stuff. So these were the two large lenses through which the development agenda was being looked at. Yeah. With COVID, what has happened is that of course, health was on the agenda of development, but preventive health, which is about hygiene and sanitation, became a big focus area due to COVID and post-COVID. Yeah, and that's something to kind of note, that shift on, increasing hand wash, ensuring that hygiene is everywhere. We have innovations that talk about hygiene of the air, that we breathe. Yeah. So the preventive health aspect, immunity, etc., has become a big deal as a result of COVID. And I think, therefore, hygiene and sanitation represents one of the biggest opportunities for India to innovate and drive its impact, not only for our own population, but even globally. Toilet Board Coalition, a few weeks ago, end of January, early February, released a report which is accessible to everyone. It is called Estimating the Sanitation Economy in India. And would you believe that, together we have, across the various different aspects of sanitation, including MHM. And I see Ajinkya Dharia also here as a speaker. I'm not sure whether he has already spoken or not. But these are the areas which constitute almost a $97 billion opportunity per year. Now, that opportunity needs to be realized, because in realizing that opportunity, we will not only help improving health and hygiene in the society, but it will also create immense amount of jobs, livelihoods, and skills in the society to take this agenda further. So it is a win-win for everyone. It will prevent degradation of the environment, it will build good health, but also build economic activity. Yeah. So with that, I want to just share with you a few things that Toilet Board is doing. As I said, that we have been running an accelerator program for the last 5 years. We have touched almost 40 companies, resulting into several million dollars of financial investment related activity. Ajinkya Dharia was, PadCare Labs was part of our accelerator program in 2020, and now we have the 2021 program ongoing with 4 new accelerators in India. So through that, what we are doing is really helping innovative mindsets and innovative ideas to achieve scale. So that is our first activity. Now, around this entrepreneurship models, where we accelerate companies with corporate mentorship, investment interfacing, etc., we also do strategic projects. Yeah, our focus in the first year of institution of Toilet Board Coalition India chapter has been urban sanitation. One development that took place sometime in middle of last year is that around this whole problem of dirty public toilets, especially women who face a lot of disgust accessing toilets that are unhygienic, unclean, and unsafe. We asked a question. Okay, yes, we all agree that these public toilets are clean, unclean, unhygienic, unsafe. But what is it? What is the definition of a clean, hygienic, and safe toilet? And through that, we developed what is called as a star-rated public toilet guide standard. Yeah, and there are 3 levels of it: the 3-star, 4-star, and 5-star, which kind of goes in an increasing order of facilities, hygiene, and all this stuff. But the 3-star rated guide is the minimum acceptable criteria for a toilet to be considered as clean, hygienic, and safe. Now, interestingly, what did we do with our work? We, our accelerator partner, Messrs. Wulu, women who go out to work in urban areas, accessing better toilets, they have licensed our standard and implemented it in their Wulu public toilets that they are making. So we, as a knowledge generating organization, shaped and carved a public toilet guide standard, and now through our partner we are implementing it in real. So in cities like Mumbai, very soon you will see public toilets which are paid, of course, through a subscription model, but clean, hygienic, and safe toilets available on the tap of your phone. So I thought that this would be something interesting from the hygiene point of view, especially in the post-COVID world. Yeah. The other thing we have through our partners come to know that, and Dr. Arumugam referred to this, is that COVID-19 has brought about a huge behavior change. It was perhaps one of the world's largest behavior change initiative, right? And we are seeing positive results out of that. In Mumbai, for example, in the hospitals, the cases for hepatitis as well as for cholera and such enteric diseases have dropped close to 70% plus. Yeah, and this is only largely being attributed to the hand washing and the hygienic behavior people are adopting. Now, these gains should not be, let go, because this not only creates a lower disease burden, but also reduces the spread of organisms in the environment. And therefore, it is very, very crucial to focus on maintaining this hygienic practice. Then, as a part of our publication on sanitation economy in India, we found that there are 2 weak spots where spread of infectious disease could still be a major challenge, given the fact that even after COVID-19 goes away, there may still be such risks prevailing in the environment. And these 2 areas being, one is academic institutions, and the second is crowded workplaces. Because of India's emerging occupations like large global centers of information technology and all that stuff, where thousands of people are sitting on one floor, and our schools and colleges having tens of thousands of people on one large campus, these remain the weak spots for spread of disease, infectious disease, and therefore my recommendation would be to focus on these areas and quickly build up the hygiene levels, including sanitation levels in these colleges, which today are not yet reached that status of where the fundamentals of hygiene are in place. So these are our observations, and across about millions of such workplaces plus academic institutions, the hygiene needs to be upgraded very fast to ensure that we are a resilient society in terms of infectious diseases. I would also like to make two additional points. Is that we have this unique opportunity because of the talent, especially the science, technology, and engineering and maths talent in India, to really leapfrog and close the gap with developed countries. There are emerging technologies. For example, there is a emerging field called wastewater epidemiology. Now, what wastewater epidemiology does is that instead of us wanting to test a cluster of people, let's say in a housing apartment, you can actually test out the prevalence of pathogens in wastewaters in certain areas and detect the presence of pathogens in this faster and are able to nip the rise of infection in very, very early stages. Yeah. So investing in wastewater epidemiology related technologies is very crucial for a crowded country like ours, which is rapidly urbanizing, to control infections. The second area I would like to touch upon is the fact that most of our water bodies are receiving untreated sewage. Yeah. And the estimates say that anywhere upwards of 67% plus to almost as high as 90% of sewage water enters our finished water bodies untreated. What should be done about it? Yeah, is it that we either append the capacities of current wastewater treatment plants, or we really do something different about it as compared to what has been the conventional thinking? And I believe India has an opportunity to really flip, at least in the tier 2 and tier 3 cities, the entire model and go for circular economy wastewater treatment technologies that not only address the challenge but create wealth out of it, and therefore lend a higher affordability to these kind of solutions. I also know that there are quite a few companies both from within India and outside India wanting to help the country in driving this, and this is an opportunity that should not be missed. Lastly, I feel in terms of preparation for this kind of COVID-like instances in future, and again, I agree absolutely 100% with Bill Gates when he said that there is a need to put in place across the world in key countries infection control specialists. So my recommendation is to really have a sort of a national infection control task force, which works with the science and technology and medical and global health fraternity and keeps an eye on what is coming up and the threats in the ecosystem around this. So as I end, I also want to just mention Toilet Bowl Coalition. We have a strong partnership with the Principal Scientific Advisor, Government of India. We are doing some very pioneering work. One of that is we are in the process of setting up a global sanitation center of excellence in India, which will be one of its kind, end-to-end invention to innovation framework. And you will hear a bit more about it very soon. And just yesterday or day before, we launched in partnership with Invest India and PSA's office a challenge, a very unique one, again has a component of water saving, but the challenge is about designing a mechanical flush system for normal Indian squat latrines, which can deliver clean the pan with only 2.5 liters. Current usage for that is anywhere upwards of 6 liters. So the challenge thrown to startups is to design a mechanical flush valve system for Indian types of toilets with only 2.5 liters of water. So these are some of the things that we are doing, and happy to be part of the ecosystem appreciate the work that you guys are leading, and I think that there is space for everyone to join it, contribute it, and transform India through the work on sanitation and hygiene. Happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you, Dr. Shah, for the detailed presentation, and wishing you all the best for the upcoming Sanitation Center of Excellence as well. Look forward to hear more on that. Sounds pretty interesting already. We will definitely take up questions. There are a couple of questions that have come in, but we'll do that at the end after this last presentation. So we are running a little behind schedule. So we were scheduled to end this at 12:30. So we'll quickly do a 5-minute presentation, I guess, and then take a couple of questions just to be fair to the audience as well. So I'll now request Ajinkya to come in, and it's a very interesting thing, and Dr. Shah already acknowledged the fact that they were part of their accelerator program as well. I personally happened to come across this innovation just a few weeks ago, and when I read about that, they were clearly solving a major problem for India as well as my organization, because when we are doing these integrated waste management projects, in various cities, including in states like Haryana and Odisha, safe disposal and environment-friendly disposal of hazardous waste, or you can say menstrual waste specifically, becomes a challenge. And even if we are tying up with someone, they are incinerating it, and the disposal of the ash is not visible to us. So it raises a lot of questions, because whatever we want to do, we want it to be sustainable in every sense, not just financially, but also socially and environmentally. And looking at the fact that India needs to dispose more than 13 billion disposal sanitary pad napkins every year, and lack of facilities in our country, I think there is a huge opportunity there for innovation, both from a perspective of a decentralized solution, and secondly, something which is affordable as well as environment friendly, because that's where we will actually hit the triple bottom line. So without taking much time, I'll request Mr. Ajinkya Dharia, who's the founder and CEO for PadCare Labs, to kindly share his innovation with us.
Sure. First of all, thank you, Ashish, for giving us the opportunity to represent our work on this well extinguished panel through the Clean India Summit. So before when as human behavior, we always try to come up with a different kind of innovative product for the hygiene and sanitation, but never we thought about what is exactly happening at the back end, how we are taking care of disposal facility. So in the similar line, since 2018, when I was an engineer and was doing a project where I observed the issue around sanitary napkin, diaper and biomedical waste related disposal. So I will just jump on the solution, what we guys are doing, because without taking much more time, but basically how we are converting such kind of used sanitary napkins to the pot like this, in a sustainable way. So in India alone, although only 33% females are using used sanitary napkins, although 98% of this waste is going to the landfill and water bodies, almost more than 1,200 crores pads annually, just in India. Imagine this not contain diapers as well. Diaper is completely a different issue, and it takes 500 to 800 years to decompose. So basically, what we guys do at the back end before starting this project, because this is just not about the disposal utility part of it. It is more about the behavior, what exactly female wants, how the segregation is happening at the toilet, at the individual washrooms. When I interacted personally more than 1,500 plus females, where I observed that female needs something to dispose used sanitary napkins at source, while maintaining their privacy without feeling disgustness about that. On the organization's level, they don't know how to segregate the waste at the organizations. And recently, the regulations around the sanitary napkin, diaper disposal are getting stricter. And what we guys did that when we did the background research, where again one interesting point we found that high percentage chances of urinary tract infection, because a single pad carries more than 30 to 50 million bacteria load. And what we did that when we had a background research where we come up with solving this issue with our 3S model, that is sustainability, safety and sovereignty, where we observe certain kind of issues around health, hygiene from waste picker perspective as well. So when we started targeting the bulk waste generators like education institutes, corporates, organizations, so the front-end issue from the female perspective we solve with the pad care bin. So pad care bin is small compact device. Unlike traditional bins, it comes along with our vapor phase technology, and because of that, we are saving such kind of waste for 30 to 45 days without any order, without any bacterial growth. We are tracking from where these pads are coming from and in what quantum to share the impact report with them. This vapor phase technology, which provides complete bacterial growth, lock to the bacterial growth for 45 days as per Ministry of Environment and Forest, what we have tested data as well, where the solving the issue of front end from female perspective of health and hygiene. On other hand, we have this machine, centralized machine. This is world's first smokeless sanitary napkin disposal and recycling system, which works on the 5D technology, where we are providing disinfection, deodorization, decolorization, deactivation of superabsorbent polymer, because this superabsorbent polymer absorbs all kind of human blood, all kind of human etc. And with our process, this process, within just 10 minutes, 20 paise per cost, which is just cheaper than 1/3 cost of the incinerator. At the output, we get segregated sterilized cellulose in the plastic that can be used for different purposes in secondary or tertiary industry. We are achieving more than 5 to 6 log bacterial reduction, and it can process more than 1,500 pads per day. Interestingly, incinerators right now is only scientific way which has to go 800 degrees Celsius, that is end of life cycle, where incinerators are facing another issues like smoke, smell, high recurring costs and high maintenance costs, because such kind of materials contains the moisture. Hence, number of incinerator companies also approach how we can use such kind of system to close the loop. And basically talking about that, what we guys are doing at pad care, segregation at source by using pad care bin, collection, back-end processing, and we are literally using this material for making the pots, making the composite materials, paver blocks, having as standard as per the government norms on the this pedestration paver blocks and the other things. So as this waste is not going to normal waste channel, it's saving other value-added waste as well. We are approaching in two ways, because we want to solve this problem at scale. One is subscription-based model, and one is the direct institutional-based model, where we are putting this kind of decentralized system at each and individual level. Where right now we are at Pune, we are more than serving 4,500 plus females on daily basis, more than 100 plus waste pickers. With our such kind of model, where we are just not providing one kind of utility solution, we are calibrating their impact, we are providing the solution, then we are taking the feedback from the consumer, because if consumer is not separating such kind of waste at root, it is not going to happen. In terms of impact right now, this is where I just want to highlight the sanitary napkin disposal, diaper, and other waste disposal is just not in terms of pollution, but it is more about the personal hygiene. In one case, we observe 62% reduction in terms of UTI cases. We are saving more at SPI on monthly basis. We are saving more than 151.2 liter metric cube of area as is going into the landfills. So this kind of system definitely is going to create a different value. Although we are taking care of every regulation aspects clearly, because when using such kind of waste, there should be strict norms against the disinfection, decolorization and other stuff. And there we are completely monitoring with our QR code and volume tracking mechanism. So actually, Dr. Nimisha is here. We are working with Toilet Board Coalition for last 12 months on how we can take it at scale. Luckily, this problem, this innovation, definitely number of innovations are in the market, but it is not going to take a number of innovations at lab level. But to take it at scale, the government, private organizations, ecosystem support always required. Where we are lucky, we are working with Tata Trust, Dassault System, CII, BIRAC under Department of Biotechnology, because they give us a support to research on such kind of niche issue and to solve this problem completely. So at the end, just want to highlight here, just the innovations are like sanitary napkin, diaper disposal are there, but to take it at scale, to take impact on global level, definitely there is support from the ecosystem is going to requirement, from regulatory aspects, from the different NGOs, private aspects, to take it at scale level. And this is what we guys are doing at Pad Care Labs. And thank you again, Ashish, for giving us opportunity to represent what we guys are doing here. So yeah, welcome. If there are questions, please definitely let us know.
Definitely, we need to thank it all, Ajinkya. I think it's an initiative that I really wanted the bigger audience to look at. While we were able to close your presence just last moment, but I'm glad you could make it. And also, like you rightly mentioned, I think there has to be regulatory support coming in, because like you were discussing the other day, like let's say if I imagine a particular a residential complex or a commercial establishment looking at installing such a product in a decentralized way, we need to have clearances coming in quickly from the pollution control boards and maybe other bodies. Maybe you can comment on that. I think that is really needed for the scale. But I think the associations you have, Ajinkya, I must congratulate, because you have some great associations with global as well as reputed Indian organizations. So, which I think should help you in speeding up or catalyzing the process of getting these approvals. And we would also try to, work with you in making sure that we are able to, expand this kind of a solution as soon as possible. Because currently, even though most of the systems are centralized, there are a lot of issues in terms of the subscription costs. They're very high, and people who really worry about the environment, they have always this question that what exactly are you literally burning it, and then what's happening with the ash? So I hope the government takes formal recognition of this as soon as possible and rolls out the implementation in quick phases. So all the best and more power to you and your team.
Thank you, Ashish.
Great. So I think so it's already time, but we'll take Divyank. Can we take a couple of questions before we wrap up?
Sure, sir. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So the first question is coming in, and I'll keep it open for anyone to pick it up. Instead of addressing it to someone. As far as cleaning rivers and water bodies is concerned, don't we think an equal amount of attention should be applied to stopping the pollutants entering the water bodies in first place? So he's talking about prevention apart from the cure being done. And if anyone would like to take it up, please.
I can address that because that is the prime thing which I was talking about. Preventive is always better than a cure at the end. And as I said, if you start doing decentralized wastewater treatment in the neighborhoods and then reusing the treated wastewater for at least the non-potable urban water requirements like horticultural, toilet flushing, as well as road cleaning, which is now increasingly in urban areas emerging an issue. Certainly, prevention is better than cure, I think. And but however, the reactive and curative approaches do get attraction because there's a lot of money into that.
Completely agree, Dr. Roila. In fact, an example comes to my head, so I'll quickly quote it. We were working on the cleanup of this Mansagar Lake in Jaipur, which surrounds the Jal Mahal Palace. And this was 2019 because 2020 we could not do much. So we started a campaign to clean it up. There was amazing support from the youngsters of the city who used to come down every weekend to clean it up. And everyone rightly asked, that we are cleaning it up, but, the waste doesn't seem to end. And then we investigated and found out that 3 big sewer lines were opening into the heritage site, that is the lake. So then, obviously, then we reached out to the municipal corporation and the development authority, and discussion started. But that clearly tells that if we do not turn off the tap and we try to keep cleaning stuff, then it's not going to give us results. So prevention is better than cure, and in a lot of situations, both are needed in parallel.
She just wanted to add that there's increasingly people think that sewage after treatment should be used to revive the water bodies. The point is that you should reuse it for non-potable purposes rather than water bodies are not a recipient of the sewage. They should not be actually. So this is increasingly being sold, saying that water bodies should be filled with treated sewage. That should be the last thing which should happen. But there is so much demand for drinking water purposes. After that, after leaving the drinking water, 80-90% of the water requirement does not require that high quality water bringing from big dams and far away distances. Or quality groundwater.
Definitely, I completely agree with you. With that, I'll take last 2 questions and then we will wrap it up. The next question is, given how the hygiene and sanitation issue, especially in India, is seen from 2 different lenses with respect to gender, do you think India needs a gender-specific approach on this front? It's a very interesting question.
Would you want me to respond?
Sure, Dr. Shah, please.
See, yes and no, both ways. But let me put Ajinkya spoke about very specific gender-related issue, and the scourge of UTI in women because of lack of hygiene on this. So that definitely that is there. One should also recognize that there has been a bit of an insensitivity around women at workplace. Yeah, I remember that it is quite common to go to factories, and factories have not designed any or not made provision for toilets for women. Yeah, it is improving, but still, I wouldn't be surprised if there is a factory in and around a city where there is no toilets for women. Yeah, so I think there is this whole issue about thinking about women that needs to be upped significantly. Now, at the same time, is hygiene really very crucial for, or rather not crucial for other genders, including this? We have a huge problem, by the way. I was in October 2019 crisscrossing Pune city for 4-5 days, going to a summit and going back to my hotel, and around a few places. And I saw that there were specific locations which had almost become black because men were using those walls for urination, and I would again pass by that same route and find that it's going on, and there is a part that, these men are using this place wrongfully, but there is also the part that there are no toilets and therefore people are using that, or at least there are no clean toilets and therefore people are using open spaces. It may be banned, it may be illegal, but there is no choice for these people to urinate. Yeah. So I think there is an element of gender lens, but I think the overall improvement, upgradation is required everywhere, and it can't be ignored. It should not be ignored anymore from where we are today.
Yep. Ashish, can I just add?
Please, sir. Please, sir. Please.
From the gender lens that we are talking of, taking too much of time, I think it's essential as far as we are concerned. Corporates have to toilets, of course, in the factories also, for women separately as of now. During the time, they are adequately sensitized. Like in Europe or even in China, I've seen Beijing, where in the gents' toilet, so as to say, they have a common toilet. Even in gents' toilets, you have the women janitors who are working in gents' toilets. That's integration. It'll take lots of years here, but abroad, that sensitization is coming in. It'll take a long time, but we as corporates have to, as of now, ensure that we have separate facilities for the women from the social standpoint. From health and hygiene, of course, but from the social standpoint. And we've got to be careful. Thank you.
Just a practical side from our end. What we found, we did a study in Madurai and Dindigul town. So then we come up with the particular for the public toilet, community toilet, because this condition and maybe the cleanliness. So menstruating women, it is always a challenge. Then we come up with a new idea that it's called Sunidhi toilet. We designed small unit. It can be attached to the existing community toilet, public toilet. Like we installed Madurai bus stand, Madurai, the marketplaces and things like that, which has got a separate facility, both the Western pan and Indian pan, because rural and urban women can use. And you have an incinerator, you have a napkin vending machine, all facility. We could see the great, the welcome sign from everyone, from the market as well as the commuter in the bus stand and things like that. So there are now the corporation is taken up, and maybe the many units are coming up now. So yeah, definitely. So sanitation, particularly for the menstruation time, it's a critical element. Most of the public toilet is not, that condition. So that's what we need to be more focused around. So access to napkin vending machine, access to incinerator, all those facilities we need to think about in the public and community toilet. Yeah.
Completely agree with all the three comments that came in. I think sensitization as well as access, both are equally important. Lack of either of them will make the process and the end result incomplete. And with that, I think I'll take the final question for today. And the question is coming in. Yes, Divyank.
Sir, I'm sorry, but we've completely run out of time. At this point, we're actually supposed to start the next session. So okay. I do apologize, but I think we'll have to wrap up the session here.
No problem. So I think we'll take up the rest of the questions offline. But I think it has been a very fruitful, insightful, and a holistic discussion wherein we talked about the policies, the initiatives, the innovations, the role of corporate social responsibility. And thank you so much, everyone. Even though we went 10 minutes beyond the schedule, so thank you so much, everyone, for sticking around throughout the session. And I really hope that we all, now that we have been introduced to each other, will leverage each other's knowledge and support to take some of the initiatives, meaningful initiatives, and high impact work forward. So again, thank you so much, Dr. Roila. Thank you, Mr. Arumugam, Brigadier Williams, sir, Dr. Shah, and Mr. Ajankya, the youngster driving the change, for joining me today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time, and thank you, Ashish sir, for moderating the session. And as always, we extend a big thank you to Green Dream Foundation, and we look forward to your continued support.